Governor J.B. Pritzker signing more than a dozen bills on Friday that the state's legislature sent him after lame duck session. And some of those bills we've talked about in the past, so it's good to get an update on what's going on. But the governor signing 15 bills impacting criminal justice, education, elections. Of course, starting January 1st, one bill says that people under 21 convicted of crimes in Illinois can no longer be sentenced to life in prison without parole. Again, that's just one of 15 different bills that Governor J.B. Pritzker approved on Friday. Another law that the governor signed Friday allows for certain individuals with a felony conviction to legally change their name beginning next year. And this was something that came up again in the kind of last few days, advancing out of one chamber and then ultimately being passed in the other chamber before it was sent off to Governor J.B. Pritzker for his signature. And this, again, is a bill that allows criminals to change their name. And when we reported on this back in early January, it was an issue that was something that State Senator Terry Bryant was concerned about, especially with the idea of what it could mean for those who might be on sex offender registries. These are public lists that people have. So here's State Representative Terry Bryant sharing some of her thoughts as to why she was not supportive of this bill and some of the overarching questions there are concerning this idea.
These are not minor offenses. So we're talking about arson, we're talking about sex trafficking, we're talking about child sex offenders, right? So a child sex offender is where I absolutely draw the line. So a child sex offender could change their name. Now, in committee, we heard that the old name would be linked to the new name. So if a person got on the sex offender registry, they could see that the person has a new name. But my question was, how are the victims notified? How are the victims' families notified, right? Because they should get some kind of a notification that this person has been allowed to change their name. The onus should not be on the victim to figure out that the person has changed their name. So we're putting one more level of oversight on a victim, when in reality, if you're going to let the bill happen, then at least notify the victims. And then secondly, I guess I understood the whole the person who had been sex trafficked and being able to change that. So in a kind of roundabout way, we were asking Senator Cunningham to maybe take out the whole sex offender part of it. And if you want to change this because somebody, was sex trafficked before, maybe we could get on board with something like that. Have to see the bill, of course, but maybe we could, but definitely not in the area of child sex offenders. It passed out of committee, and it's already passed in the House.
And again, they went ahead and passed it out of both chambers and advanced it onto Governor J.B. Pritzker's desk, where Friday he signed that alongside 14 other bills. Now, also in the stack of legislation that he signed starting this summer, cars, vans, and other similarly classed vehicles can now operate as school buses under a Secretary of State permit. You got to imagine this will free up a lot of transportation resources and maybe not require large buses to go all the way out into the countryside to pick up a student and bring them to school. They can now do that in a vehicle that's like a car or a van, so that'll be interesting. Another measure that impacts education allows for Chicago principals to join a union and collectively bargain. You've got another bill that passed as well that was kind of fascinating, and this deals with legislation that actually was brought forward by former State Representative Sarah Wojcicki Jimenez. And if you recall, this was legislation that required any new state jobs that would be created would have to be in Illinois, in Springfield, in Sangamon County. And this was under the Rauner administration. Bruce Rauner, the Republican, he thought to himself that this is something that should be happening with any future jobs. And you have the bill number, House Bill 1563, that was kind of last minute coming together, but apparently from the governor's office, it says it amends the CMS Services Law of the Civil Administrative Code to remove the preference for location of jobs in Sangamon County. So that's signed and effective immediately. So what was thought to be a measure to try to increase the economy in Springfield by encouraging state jobs to be in the state capital or around the state capital, except for jobs that require, like Department of Transportation regional jobs, Illinois State Police regional jobs. But if they were other jobs that could be located in and around Springfield, then they were required to be in and around Springfield. But a last-minute bill that the governor approved on Friday removes that provision. But there's other measures that were also passed, and this one deals with mail-in ballots, and something that Republicans pushed back against whenever this came up. And this was about mail-in ballots that are being offered up at county clerk's offices. And this is State Representative Curtis Tarver, a Democrat from Chicago, debating State Representative Amy Ellick from Alton, a Republican, and State Representative Ryan Spain, a Republican from Peoria. They laid out various aspects of their opposition of this idea of a bill that passed that allows for county clerks to check the mail-in ballot signature on the application with the mail-in ballot signature on the actual ballot, not having the clerk check the mail-in ballot that's mailed in with the voter file. Now they can just check the mail-in ballot application, but there were some concerns that this could lead to the possibility of more voter fraud.
With vote by mail, there's an opportunity, which we believe is always been the opportunity for this, we're clarifying it now, to check the voter registration or the signature on the application as it relates to the ballot for vote by mail. Our thought in the language is that it would allow for both that digitized as well as the original placard of voter registration. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I think that then the language that's crossed out in this bill should not be crossed out, but maybe a little bit more specific, so that, because the way that we're reading this now is that it is okay to compare a mail-in ballot certification signature with the application. And as we've discussed, and I think was probably on the record in the circuit court case in DuPage County, that's an obvious avenue for voter fraud. That if someone receives the, hey, do you want to do a mail-in ballot at their home, they could fill that in for a family member, request the ballot, sign it themselves, get the ballot, vote the ballot, sign the ballot certification, send it back. And if that ballot comes back and all they're comparing it to is the application, that's not a comparison at all. So I want to make that clear, that this is not going to, this is causing the opportunity for more voter fraud.
And now by diluting it, by weakening it, by eliminating a requirement to follow that source document, as another member mentioned just moments ago, we are weakening the protections of our elections. And folks, it doesn't have to be this way. I would love to be in a situation where the state of Illinois for voting is not relying on election judges and their signature matchup expertise to make sure that we have done all that we can to reduce voter fraud. There's a way to do it. We should not be relying on signatures in the state of Illinois. What we should be doing is what most states in our country do. Red states, blue states, swing states, the vast majority of states in the United States have a simple fix, and it's voter ID. You show an ID when you go to vote.
So, again, that bill signed in a package of bills that Governor J.B. Pritzker approved on Friday. 15 different bills ranging from criminal justice to education to elections. And obviously, we'll see all the different bills that lawmakers put forth and take up in the weeks and months ahead. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg.